Hi friends. I know. It's been a long time and I was meaning to get back to it much sooner. So today I'm going to kick off my comeback with a doozy of an episode. Okay. I think in these current times, it's nearly impossible not to talk about the huge topic that has seemingly taken over the United States for the past year and then some. Yes, we're going to talk about Donald Trump. Yeah, we have to. Stop. We have to. More specifically, how Donald Trump has impacted relationships and families in the United States in a way that no president in history has ever done before. And I feel like Donald Trump would like to hear that. I feel like Donald Trump would love that statement. Trump often makes claims that he is the best president in history.
Nobody's stronger than me.
Nobody has better toys than I do.
The only one to do this.
Nobody's fighting for the veterans like I'm fighting for the veterans.
There's nobody that's done so much for equality as I have.
It's the best one to do that.
There is nobody that respects women more than I do. Nobody's ever had crowds like Trump has had.
Etc. After you hear statements like these a certain number of times, I would hope that most could identify that cognitive malfunction for what it is, which is grandiosity and an inflated sense of self-importance. Because it is not objective fact that Donald Trump is the most loved, most effective, most supported, most respected, etc. president to ever exist. But he has said all those things as though they are the facts. Those may be some people's opinions of him. We certainly know it's his own opinion of himself. But that is the difference between opinions and facts. One is subjective, one is objective. When you are of a certain age, that you should easily understand the difference, yet you excessively state positive opinions about yourself and your image, how others feel about you, and your success, as though those are objective facts, not opinions. You are simply, by definition, demonstrating grandiosity and an inflated sense of self-importance. So we know that Donald Trump exhibits this often. To be even clearer, there's nothing wrong with confidence or complimenting yourself. What is specifically grandiosity is when you excessively feel compelled to mention these things as if they are your favorite thing to talk about in nearly every situation. And I think you would be being disingenuous if you couldn't admit that if I had a plethora of links in front of me right now that were all random links to different public statements that Donald Trump has made, I could close my eyes and pick any number of them, just at random. And I'm willing to bet that it will contain this in some way. He literally says it in every statement that he makes in some way. Like, I hope that's something that we can all agree on is factual. We see it all the time. I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's just that is what it is. It is grandiosity. So let's move on from that. However, I do not deny that Donald Trump does stand out from former presidents in many factual ways. And one is the impact his presidency has had on relationships and families, specifically in dividing and ending them. Let's get into it. I want you to imagine this scene with me, okay? It is Thanksgiving. You are over at your Aunt Joan and Uncle Stanley's house, your cousin Samuel, for Thanksgiving dinner. And it is just going oddly smoothly this year. Your Uncle Brett was not able to gain access to your grandpa's liquor cabinet because they thought ahead and they locked it. And he's only just minutes ago resorted to swigs of the antibacterial hand gel. So you guys have at least until after dinner before that starts kicking in. Superb. Okay. And Aunt Nelda is finally on the correct combination of meds. Okay. So she's lost in a TV show somewhere instead of like wandering around and incoherently screaming at the smaller grandchildren. Things like,
"Get back in your cages. It's not dinner time yet."
Yeah, something like that. So great. So it's time to sit down to eat. And all you hear is just normal positive chit chatter going around. Things like,
"All this delicious food, Aunt Joan, you really outdid yourself.
And
Can someone please pass the butter?"
Just nothing too heavy. Just very normal, very wholesome. And there's something even more wholesome about this year. Let's say that your cousin Sam has his new girlfriend over to have Thanksgiving dinner with your family, okay? Her name is Marissa. Some sweet little cherub in your family has the bright idea.
Hey, let's all go around the table and say what we're thankful for.
Thanksgiving, you guys all do that, right? So it starts going around. People are like,
I was thankful for my new dog. I'm thankful for my taxidermy collection.
I used to be a dancer. A nudie one.
Okay. Great. It gets to your cousin's girlfriend, Marissa. Marissa, sweetheart, sweet girl. She says,
I am thankful for being welcomed here today into this lovely family. Honestly reminds me a lot of my own family gatherings that we used to have with my abuela in Mexico. So I really appreciate being included and how welcoming you've all been. Thank you so much.
I mean, all you hear from all around the table is,
We were so happy you came.
Oh, we're so happy to have you.
great. It's going so good. Next to Marissa is the head of the household, your Uncle Stanley, Sam's father.
Uncle Stan, it's your turn.
And Uncle Stan says,
Well, thank you there, little jitterbug. I'm thankful for Donald Trump's amazing work at deporting all them illegals. No! And for making America great again.
Uncle Brett quickly takes another swig of his hand gel, and many people around the table audibly gasp, like, yikes. You know, like, read the room. Your cousin Sam tries to discreetly murmur.
Dad, not today. I thought we talked about this.
And Uncle Stan, not being discreet at all, says,
Oh, all right. I know. Keep politics away from the dinner table. My bad.
but his valiant apology is too late because Marissa, in tears, is already exiting through the front door. Sam pops up to go after her, yelling back.
Nice flipping job, Dad.
Uncle Stan's wife, your Aunt Joan, just glares at him from across the table as he continues to respond, seemingly oblivious to the havoc he has just bestowed upon the family.
What did I say? Well, what did I say? Sorry. Didn't know people could get so offended over politics. Sheesh. We can just agree to disagree, you know. Like the good old days. It's called maturity. Maybe some of you babies need to go back to your nurseries if you can't figure that out.
Oh, no.
Aunt Joan's glare intensifies. She gives Uncle Stan a swift little kick under the table because Sam is sulking back into the room with his head hung down. One of the cousins says,
Where's Marissa? Is she okay?
and Sam looks up directly into the eyes of his father as he says,
She broke up with me. Thanks to you, Dad.
Uncle Stanley starts to say,
Thanks to May. Thanks to May for...
Sam keeps going.
She said her and her family's safety are not politics, Dad. And frankly, she doesn't trust anybody who supports such a morally corrupt man.
Uncle Stan, just shoveling the turkey into his gullet, continues to defend himself.
That's probably for the best, son. I had no idea you were dating an illegal. Matter of fact, I can't believe you brought an illegal in this house without my permission. Disrespectful. I'll find it in my heart to forgive you. Now just sit down and eat your dinner. And you quit upsetting your mama now.
Aunt Joan is falling apart at this point. Tries to stop him, yelling,
Stanley!
Sam lets his dad finish calmly and then says to him,
Marissa is a U.S. citizen, you imbecile.
Uncle Stan says,
Don't you call me an imbecile, you lunatic. Matter of fact, you can get right the hell on out of here with that illegal.
Sam stares at his dad for a couple more seconds, just disappointed, before grabbing his coat and angrily storming out, slamming the door behind him. House gives a little shudder. Everything feels heavy now. Well, the rest of the family sits in quiet hell for the next few minutes.
Who could ask for anything more? Who could ask for anything more?
No one eating anything except for Uncle Stan.
Kids, am I right? Young, dumb, and in love. I don't know what that was all about.
He says as he catches a glimpse of his halfway in tears wife. She's just trying so hard to hold them back at this point.
I know, no politics at the dinner table. I know, Joni. That was my mistake. I'm man enough to say that. I'm gonna work on that. You have my word.
That's all Aunt Joan can take. She leaves the table, quietly crying to herself as she closes herself into her bedroom, sobbing. He turns to one of your other cousins.
These mashed potatoes, Victoria. My word. Superb. I'm really tasting homegrown on these.
Uncle Brett finally caves to the antibacterial hand gel and falls out of his chair. And his two teenage sons have to cart him off to the car. They leave. Aunt Nelda starts screaming,
Ice. No. Ice.
That's the signal for her to get to bed. Stanley reacts to that.
Damn it. Aunt Nelda. We really gotta limit your TV intake. You must be seeing some of that propaganda a little too much. You've been saying some lunatic stuff lately, and I think it's rubbing off on my son, ruining Thanksgiving dinner like that. It's time for you to go to bed.
And then Stan helps Aunt Nelda get to her bedroom. She mistakes him for an ICE agent, continuously shouts,
I am a citizen! I am a citizen! I'm a citizen! I'm a citizen!
He just says,
Oh, you stop it, Aunt Nelda. God! Stop! Yes, stop it, murder!
the whole way there. And that's taken care of. The last few stragglers try to help Aunt Joan clean up a little bit, and then you guys make your way for the door and head home. Darn politics. But happy Thanksgiving, right?
No!
We're no longer agreeing to disagree over taxes and like healthcare packages. Donald Trump ushered in an age that elevated political misalignment to foundational moral misalignment. And that is where politics ends and humanity begins. And when two opposing sides cannot agree on what is humane and what is moral, it feels like people are no longer arguing over your politics. They're arguing over your morals and your deepest values. And when there's a president that's constantly pegging one side as criminal, the enemy, it's not going to be conducive to a quality relationship any longer. How could it be? Because for you to, on one end, support that person as president, as the leader of the country, support the things that he's saying, doing, you have to directly be violating the humanity of your partner, your brother, your sister, your cousin, your uncle, your aunt, whoever, your mother, your father, your child. Therefore, there's going to be some division. And it's really hard to make any argument that that's not exactly what Donald Trump wants. Integral parts of our foundational systems have been compromised. And we should all feel like we need to somewhat unite over this instead of allow ourselves to be ripped apart. It's really done that for all of us. It's really created this sense of like, I don't know what to trust anymore. That just makes a group of people weaker, more susceptible to the influence of a more authoritarian style government. And that should be something that everyone who wants to live in America and live by the American way, very concerned and very upset. So sometimes I cannot for the life of me understand how enough has not been enough yet for anyone supporting our current president. But today, my point is to just illustrate what has taken place and how these things, just as objectively as I possibly can, without sounding like I'm a lunatic leftist, point out how that has been, in an unprecedented way, such a dividing factor. You might think that I'm referring to Democrat versus Republican, or left versus right, or liberal versus conservative. But the division that I see happening is a different one. And to demonstrate how I don't really see it that way, I have to tell you a little bit about my history in politics. And that is, there is not one. Before, I would say maybe up to 5 years ago, but even more so, just this past year, I largely, a little embarrassingly, didn't care. I did vote. I knew the basic issues to be able to vote for a president. But other than that, these things were not part of my daily life. They really just bored me to talk about. And my gosh, I miss those days. I miss those days when politics was just boring, you know? And it was something that really wasn't necessary for every single person to be involved in every single day and on a spectacle everywhere we turn. And so one thing that I think that Donald Trump's presidency has had a side effect of is it kind of overlapped in a way that I've never seen in my adulthood ever before. It overlapped into issues that I was compelled to need to start paying attention because of. I think for nearly everyone, I think that's the case at this point. I mean, if you're avoiding paying attention to all of this, I'd like to know how. I don't necessarily feel like I have a political party that I'm aligned with 100%. I just have morals and standards and beliefs that I see a certain way, some which are topics that we can absolutely agree to disagree about and be mature and still have a working relationship that's healthy in every way. But then there are topics that are not like that. There are topics that if we disagree about morally, meaning like we disagree about the foundational pillars of right and wrong, then I mean, I can't help but recognize in that situation, that person does not share my core values, like in such a way that is so deeply connected to who I am. And I mean, therefore I cannot have a healthy relationship with that person in any way. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't be cordial with you. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't believe that you deserve to be treated fairly and with human decency, of course. But it does just inherently mean that our relationship cannot exist past a level of surface connection, if even that. And if I do that, it's because I am in a situation where I am compelled to have to interact in some way. In the category of things that we can agree to disagree on that aren't in this dire category that I'm talking about, like of foundational morality, so all the other things that are not in that category, I like to challenge myself. I try to never see myself as being set in a belief, because information changes and the world changes and people change and different developments come out and different perspectives come out. And it's great practice to go into conversations with an open mind that says, if I hear something in this conversation that is worth me examining, that is of a level that is worth reconsidering my belief, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to evaluate my belief, because my belief is not me. Those types of beliefs, those are not who I am. That is what the information around me and everything I've taken in, I have credibly evaluated it and looked it all over back and forth and thought about my morals. And I've thought about, how do I feel about that? And that could change. If somebody presents me with information that would make it logical for me to change that belief, I would absolutely be open to doing that. And I would want to do that, because why would I be so dedicated to a belief if it's not aligned with my morals, or it's not the right way to believe because I'm missing this part of the information or something like that? Why would I just want to be so stubborn to just be dedicated to a belief, just to be right and just go around arguing with people and not listening to them? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So if the topic does fall into that category, that slim one, it does get complicated where it comes down to family and relationships, people closest to us. There's no coexisting and just not talking about politics with these things. This has nothing to do with politics. That's the whole point. It just so happens that this particular politician who has made his way into the position of commander-in-chief twice has laid bare the people who have beliefs that have remained hidden up until now, when they have become emboldened to stop hiding them. Just some examples of what would fall under topics that we could agree to disagree on. And I'm going to lean even on the side of maybe like a little controversial here. So I would say views about the morality of abortions. That would be agree to disagree territory. Healthcare, public safety, education, jobs, inflation, etc. The basic disputes that most people commonly have surrounding those topics, that falls into the category of agree to disagree. Totally doable. Some examples of what would fall under foundational moral misalignment would be things like murder, racism, homophobia, sexual crimes, including those committed against children and minors, predatory behavior from a position of influence, blatant misogyny, bigotry, domestic violence, including emotional and psychological abuse, exploitation of others with no regard, or also the protection, known support, or intentional cover-up of those who historically, actively, and or repetitively commit said acts that I just mentioned. Okay? So it's very specific, and I feel extremely reasonable. It's just basic right and wrong. And those things are just wrong. They're too wrong to overlook. Divorce lawyers and law firms all over the country have reported that after the 2024 election, they have never seen so many couples inquiring about divorce over so-called political misalignment, over politics, over the election. Official studies are still underway, but the experience in real time is pretty undeniable. I mean, I've never witnessed such a palpable and witnessable divide in my lifetime, for sure. Posts to social media, places like Reddit and Quora have exploded with people asking the same question. Should I leave my spouse because they voted this way? Should I break up with my boyfriend or girlfriend because they said this about this election? Should I break ties with my family, my parents? Even dating platforms have been reporting an extreme surge of profiles that specifically say no Trump voters, no Trump supporters, things like that. Actually, in a survey of the users of a dating site called Coffee Meets Bagel, results indicated that 77% of the female users said that they would not date someone who voted for Donald Trump. And roughly 65% of all users, any gender, reported the same. I mean, I personally have heard from men for years that online dating is much tougher for men than it is for women. And so if you think about that, and then you're going into it as a Trump voter, and 77% of the female population have already written you off as a absolute deal breaker, I don't think that's going to make it any easier. So That's why that type of a thing is more prominent now. People just flat out lying, because what else are you going to do, I guess? Or maybe like examine your beliefs. I don't know. Reddit and Quora posts reporting an incident of a conservative man flat out lying about voting for Donald Trump or their support of Donald Trump was a story that's been on the rise very recently. So many reports of this happening, basically just to get a date. So why is Donald Trump such a catastrophe for American couples and families and friendships like no president before him? And I'll tell you why. It is because of his repetitive demonstrations of acts that fall under category 2. Because he is so far out of moral alignment with everything that America is supposed to stand for at its roots and be about. Yet here we are, somehow. And don't get me wrong, political mismatching has been a reason for relationships to be out of alignment forever. That's always been a thing. You have the right to be very passionate about a certain cause and not want to be with someone who doesn't feel the same passion about that or may have opposing views to that cause. And that's fine. They don't have to be on category 2. That's just period. Okay? And also, maybe other people felt so strongly about other presidents. That's totally fine. And that does happen. That is a common reason for people to not be able to make a relationship work, or friendships not to work or last, families to argue and maybe even cut ties. That might be that serious to some people. That does happen. But I am saying, amidst that baseline that we've already always seen forever, that has skyrocketed in this presidency. This particular term of Trump's, it has absolutely skyrocketed in a way that we have never seen before. Honestly, I was originally going to pick 5 of the topics that are in category 2 and then give you examples and evidence of Donald Trump showing that he demonstrates these things. But Donald Trump has actually done so many horrible, illegal, and inhumane and fraudulent things that I had to cut it back to the 2 most prominent ones because he's just done it so many times, so egregiously, that I feel a better focus would be just on the 2 main topics. So let's dive in. So first reason is, hold on tight, Donald Trump is racist. I know. For a lot of my audience, I'm sure that won't be hard to swallow. And duh. But for some that feel triggered by that, please just wait and hear the evidence. If you're immediately compelled to be angry by that statement and run away from this video, you're exactly who I'm talking about. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. The first instance I'm going to point to is the 1973 racial discrimination lawsuit. And that was the Department of Justice versus Donald Trump and his dad. And it was for discriminating against Black tenants by not renting to them.
14,000 apartments in 39 different buildings, all mostly white tenants. That is until the Department of Justice took notice in 1973 and slammed Donald Trump and his father Fred Trump with a lawsuit. Trump management was charged with discriminating against African Americans and breaking federal law. Donald Trump, then just 27, was president of the company. The Department of Justice accused the Trumps of violating the Fair Housing Act, arguing they were turning away renters based on race and color.
First piece of evidence is that federal investigators sent out paired undercover applicants, okay, just secret shoppers basically, who were identical on paper for things such as income and job status and their rental needs. The only difference being that one was white and one was Black. And the results of that investigation were not unclear at all.
Who tipped them off? Local activists, so-called testers, posing as potential renters at Trump's buildings. Elise Goldweber was a lawyer for the DOJ's Fair Housing section at the time and was called on to handle the Trump case.
When the Black testers came, they were shown, they may have been shown apartments, but were told nothing was available. Whereas when the white testers came, yes, there were things that were available. That would be the norm.
Second piece of evidence is that multiple employees came in and testified that they were instructed by upper management to mark Black applicants' applications with a C, okay? And that C stood for you know what.
And according to the Justice Department, they even had a secret coding system to do it, a racial code. Here's how.
Some of the applications were marked with a C, which we learned that it meant colored, so that the prospective tenants who had come in were noted to be colored.
Yes, you heard her right. The Department of Justice alleged applications submitted by prospective African American renters were designated with a secret code, such as C for colored, to indicate a Black person was looking to rent.
Third piece of evidence. Multiple employees testified that they were specifically told not to rent to Black applicants. Period. They were told to tell Black applicants that there were no units available, even when units were available. And another big piece of evidence was that it wasn't just found in one area. It was across multiple states at multiple complexes. That was proof that this was a systematic practice, not just the fault of one local manager. No, this went all the way to the top. And who was at the top? Donald Trump. And then without even any of that testimony, just looking at the statistical data of the demographic of his housing units was telling. The housing complex would be in the middle of a very diverse neighborhood, but only have white people, almost solely. That doesn't match up with what would be natural if they were following proper rental practices. The case actually ended in a settlement, okay? This is very common of a pattern with Donald Trump and his legal issues. It wasn't due to lack of evidence, but because fighting it would take years. And unfortunately, both the DOJ and Donald Trump were much more willing to come to a settlement than spend years fighting it in court on either side. And in this settlement, Trump was ordered to make specific changes to his business practices, or he would face imminent shutdown. The court ordered him to advertise vacancies specifically in minority papers, provide weekly reports to the DOJ on every applicant from that point on, stop using racial coding, and to open properties to people that they had been excluding. Well, cool, whatever. Trump falsely boasted to the public that he had won the case from that day forth.
But the Trumps never admitted any wrongdoing, reportedly noting the settlement was in no way an admission of a violation.
He did not win that case. Anyone involved in the case has that stance, besides maybe Trump's lawyers and Trump. The second event that proves Donald Trump is the incident with the Central Park Five.
My next guest is someone who knows exactly what it's like to be targeted by Donald Trump. He was one of the 5 teenagers wrongly accused of raping a jogger in New York Central Park in 1989. After that attack, then businessman Donald Trump took out this full-page ad in several of the city's papers that read, quote, "Bring back the death penalty. Bring back our police."
In these articles, he referred to them repeatedly in language that was dehumanizing and demonizing and racially toned. He referred to them, for example, as a wolf pack, so reducing them to an animalistic nature, which is common in the dehumanization of Black people, especially stemming back to slavery.
Long before Donald Trump started calling Mexicans rapists or refused to condemn white supremacists in Charlottesville, as we mentioned, Citizen Trump took out this full-page ad back in 1989.
This language influenced the public narrative of their guilt before they ever got to the courtroom. Innocent until proven guilty was not possible in this case because Donald Trump decided to demonize and dehumanize these boys with no proof of anything. And he used the racial tensions of the time period in New York as a pathway to stir up the public, to see these boys as no more than animals, taking away the aspect that they're still children, teenagers, yes, but children nonetheless, and that they deserve a fair trial. They were assumed guilty before they even entered. Unlike Donald Trump's previous case I talked about, this case, there was no evidence against these boys, actually. None. No eyewitnesses. The victim had no recollection of the attack even happening because she was in a coma and then she woke up and didn't remember.
If you watch the new Netflix series When They See Us, you should. It tells the story of how the then boys were coerced by police into confessing to the rape and brutal beating of that white woman whom none of the group had ever even seen before.
They saw you rape the lady.
I didn't see a lady or hit anyone.
I didn't see any lady. Kevin.
I didn't see any lady.
The Netflix series that retells it all in painful detail is directed by Ava DuVernay, but it's not the first effort to revisit the story. Back in 2012, Sarah Burns and her father, Ken Burns, brought us the documentary The Central Park Five, which included heartbreaking interviews with the real-life McRae, Richardson, Santana, Wise, and Salam.
I felt like they might take us to the back of the precinct and kill us.
You're not gonna go home until you give up a story.
I'm telling the guy, I don't know what you're talking about. They're getting a little angry.
And they're like, you know you did it.
Yet, Trump still used his money and his influence to sway public opinion and jury opinion so harshly towards these boys that they stood no chance.
2 separate trials later, all 5 were convicted, despite there being no witnesses or DNA evidence linking them to the scene. They all served between 6 and 13 years in prison, incredible suffering by their families along the way.
In 2002, a serial rapist, Matias Reyes, confessed to the crime. And guess what? His DNA matched the DNA from the rape kit. The 5 boys were finally exonerated. And then in 2014, they were awarded $41 million for the injustice.
45 wanted us unalive. He wanted us dead. Today, we are exonerated. because the actual perpetrator confessed and DNA proved it.
Yet even at this point, talk about character here. When Trump was asked whether or not he would apologize for the influence that he had on that trial as a substantial contributor to these teenage boys' wrongful conviction at the time, he responded in typical Trump fashion.
That guy says he still stands by the original guilty verdict.
Which I'm not sure why anyone's denying the pattern of this at this point. He responded just like you would assume he would respond.
And now, even now, as a presidential nominee for the Republican Party, Trump hasn't allowed science or evidence to change his initial reaction to the case. Just this week, Trump said he still considers the men, again, exonerated by the criminal justice system and by DNA scientific evidence, guilty, issuing a statement saying, quote, they admitted they were guilty. The police doing the original investigation say they were guilty. The fact that case was settled with so much evidence against them is outrageous. The woman so badly injured will never be the same.
He said, well, they admitted to it. And I think the police did a fantastic job on that case. Okay. So that is taken to mean he would be referring to how they coerced these boys under intense interrogation and then coerced out a false confession from 5 boys that were 14 to 16 years old without their parents present. Fantastic job, guys. I guess Trump thinks so. Despite the fact that there was DNA evidence that proved by fact. That is the most factual evidence that you can possibly have and is one of the only things that is possible for exonerating someone, for getting them out of prison and knowing definitively that they did not commit a crime, and that was present here. Yet he still would not say that he got it wrong. He refused to ever acknowledge his part in how things got so skewed against the teens.
It felt like he was kind of directing people toward you, and you were scared. You were at home. You're with your families. You're 16 years old.
Dishonorable. Just dishonorable conduct.
I mean, you brought this letter tonight that you got from an anonymous person. Could you just read it for me to share what someone said to me?
You know, I carry this with me as a reminder that I can't live in fear. But this letter right here says, the Lord will punish Yusuf for what he did to that poor, defenseless girl. And then directing their attention to my mother, you will also be punished for raising such an animal. He does not deserve to live, and neither do you. Folks sent this to us. They sent us letters like this. I have a whole billfold full of them. And it was all on the heels of that ad that Donald Trump placed in New York City's newspapers. Even folks like Pat Buchanan said, well, let's just take Corey Wise and hang him from a tree in Central Park.
And they sent that to your house?
Yes.
I mean, it makes your stomach turn to think of you as a 16-year-old knowing you didn't do this, reading that, and for your mom to have to read that.
And then, actually, a few years later, when asked again if he would ever apologize.
And yet when Trump was asked last week if he would apologize to Antron McCray, Kevin Richardson, Raymond Santana, Corey Wise, and Yusef Salaam for his past statements, here was his response.
April. Mr. President, will you apologize to Central Park 5? They've been exonerated. There have been videos and movies shown about the case, and you came out with a full-page ad saying that they should die, that they should have the death penalty.
Why do you bring that question up now? It's an interesting time to bring it up. You have people on both sides of that.
You shouldn't. Just like in Charlottesville on this issue, there is only one side. But clearly, racial animus continues to blind those who choose not to see it.
They admitted their guilt. If you look at Linda Fairstein and if you look at some of the prosecutors, they think that the city should never have settled that case. So we'll leave it at that.
And he said, you have people on both sides, which, like, I have no idea what that means. People on the side of delusion who don't accept DNA evidence and don't accept that they were wrong about 5 black teenagers or Latino teenagers, or the people that are on the side of, like, hello, obvious reality. If he means that, then yeah, that's true. But, like, I don't really know what that's saying for him. So it was quite embarrassing of a response, I think. This could have also been referring to the fact that the victim herself, unfortunately, had her own reluctance to accept the exoneration, despite the full admission that she herself had no recollection of the act, and despite that her perpetrator said he acted alone, and his DNA matched. She never expressed empathy for the 5 teens.
I think someone should be able to bring the Central Park 5 and the Central Park jogger together, and not if she doesn't want to. I mean, I don't want her to relive this atrocity ever again, you know, but there has to be healing. There has to be some kind of level going on. Because, I mean, she was victimized twice. She was victimized in the first way because she was raped and left for dead. And then she was told that the people who did this to her were in jail. And 13 years later, she finds out that that truth that she thought was true was actually not true. Worst thing in the world. And I mean, on the other hand, they should bring Donald Trump into the fray because he was institutional in being the fire starter that caused the people of New York City to galvanize against us.
She actually expressed her dissatisfaction and her discomfort with their exoneration inexplicably, which is complicated and layered. It's not right. It's really sad. But as a victim who went through a traumatic experience, I can't say for sure what that's linked to. But Trump has no excuse. Trump was not involved in the crime at all. He was not close to the victim. He was not in any way related. He simply just decided to use his position of power and influence to call for such harsh treatment of now very well-known innocent boys. Many people were horrified at Donald Trump's use of power that way.
Senator John McCain acknowledged Mr. Trump's, quote, outrageous statements about the Central Park Five. Now, Mr. McCain used a word to refer to you guys that Trump never has, and that word is innocent. Do you think that Mr. Trump will ever admit he was wrong?
No, not at all. I highly doubt it.
Yusef Salaam, do you consider Donald Trump a good person?
I don't think so. I mean, he's already shown to the greater American society that he is not a good person. Campaigning to be the president of the United States, still continuing to spew this rhetoric. I'm looking on Twitter at his supporters, and it's very, very clear that they are not concerned with any truths.
And he did it by igniting fire against the boys, by reinforcing racial myths about dangerous young black men. That was a thing of the times that he knew would catch fire, that he knew would be influential at the time. And Trump has remained unrepentant for that. You remember being 14 and 16, right? Maybe. Pretty confusing time. You've had trauma happen in your life, tough situations to go through, maybe persecution, maybe been bullied before, maybe you have been accused of something that you didn't do or that misrepresented your character, or someone had a malicious intent against you. And then even in the face of proof, it seemed that didn't matter and that people continued to persecute you because it was never about what you actually did. It was just about hating you. If you've ever experienced anything like that, imagine now that after going through that on such a grand scale in the entire public's eye, where the entire United States or even world at large witnessed this cruel treatment and miscarriage of justice put upon you by this particular man. Not him by himself, but he stuck his nose in where it had no business and made it so much worse with his own power and influence that he had. It was a special, very unique thing that he had, and he used it for that, against you. The horror that it must be to then turn around and see the American public still make him your president. There's no way you can't take that personal, that you can look past that and go,
they must just be really supportive of his policies.
Stop. It's gross. And the sad part is everyone had this information before he was voted into office, the first time and the second time. Mainly the second time. Majorly, there was no excuse the second time. This wouldn't be the last time that Donald Trump took racial tensions and used the racially related tones of the times to push a narrative that he had no evidence of being true and would be detrimental long-term to people of color. The next time he did this was when he jumped on the bandwagon of the conspiracy theory that Barack Obama was not a natural-born U.S. citizen and therefore his presidency was not qualified as constitutional. So, granted, Donald Trump did not start this rumor, but what he did was he took a conspiracy at the time that had no basis in fact, no evidence of this, none of the sort, and actually had already been proven with Obama releasing his birth certificate. I've heard people actually say, to this day,
well, Obama never proved it. We've still never seen the birth certificate.
That's an absolute lie. He's actually proved it multiple times, long ago. And after he already had released the first one was when Donald Trump began to jump on this bandwagon and join in to this rumor, which escalated it back up to a public level where it was actually being considered again and being spread around. Now, yes, it's pretty obvious that Donald Trump did this because he wanted to break into the political sphere as a strong Republican candidate because he was considering running for office. And he wanted to smear Obama's reputation and name, and he just wanted people to question this so that it would be a higher chance for him to get noticed and gain more of a following. He is notorious for playing on things like this. This is textbook exploitation of others for your own personal gain. And that means that by any means necessary, you do not care who you need to slander, step on, lie about, destroy a life of. You don't care what happens to other people as long as you are pursuing something that you want, that you think you deserve, that's going to benefit you. Your rise to success, your growth in some way comes at the expense of other people, suffering, being lied about, losing their position, losing things for their family. That doesn't matter to you. So that's interpersonal exploitation for your own personal gain. And Donald Trump, again, demonstrates this all the time. He constantly goes that route. He used nothing else besides the fact that Obama was black because there was no other reason for him to question Obama's citizenship or for anybody who was questioning it besides the fact that he was black. Like millions of Americans actually were saying this is true. He's not a natural born U.S. citizen for no reason. They had no reason to say it besides his dad was born in Kenya, so we think he was. And I mean, you can just maybe guess how many other presidents in the United States in the history of all presidencies have had somebody question this. And the true answer is a couple, but here are the details around that. So the most recent one was John McCain. And the reason that he was questioned about it is because he was born in 1936 in the Panama Canal Zone, which is where his father was actually currently stationed in the Navy. So his father was an American citizen serving in the Navy. And then so John McCain was born there. Typically, I don't know if that qualifies as being a natural born U.S. citizen or not. But guess what happened when that was questioned? For one, that was a good reason to ask about it. Actual proof, this is a legitimate reason why we want to make sure this is legit. And it is following the Constitution. So then the U.S. Senate unanimously passed a resolution that declared that John McCain was a natural born citizen and that they were going to look at that as being a natural born U.S. citizen. And then everybody across the political spectrum just agreed and it was over with. Okay, so then the last president to have that happen prior to him, well, that was Chester A. Arthur, our 21st president, back in the 1880 election. Okay, political opponents of Chester Arthur spread this rumor, suggested, hey, we think he might have been born in Canada. His family was living somewhere right there on the Canadian border. Maybe they were in Canada. And then he said, no, I was born in Vermont. And then guess what? No one ever said it again. And then he just went on with his life and his presidency, and nobody had a problem with it again. And it was only his political opponents that were spreading this rumor. That's it. Now, the difference with Obama is that there was no evidence that should have raised concerns that Barack Obama may not be a natural born U.S. citizen, besides the fact that people who are looked at the fact that he was black and went,
maybe he's not American. Maybe he's not really one of us. Maybe we have this view in our head, in our minds, of a white leader in America, and that's what an American looks like. And so this doesn't seem right.
And it wasn't just his political opponents. It was millions of Americans. And so when they ran studies on this to find out if there was a racial component, there were strong correlations, strong correlative data that was suggesting that if there's a racial element to this person, if this person has a distaste with desegregation, if these people are people who have views that are negative about integrating other races, that typically would coincide with the same people that were saying this about Barack Obama and then would not accept even the evidence when he first released it. Okay. And so Donald Trump was one of those people, and he wouldn't stop. He brought it up in every interview he possibly could do it in. The movement got a name. It was called the birther movement, and it gained so much traction. Despite the fact that Obama had already produced the records, Donald Trump didn't start circulating the rumor again until 2011. Okay. So at that time, Donald Trump was considering running for president, and he just repeatedly questioned this. He would claim things like, I have people in Hawaii investigating it. They cannot believe what they're finding. I can just hear his voice saying it right now, like, of course. And so then these statements helped push that controversy back into major news coverage. And then it started all over again. So ridiculous. So then in April of that same year, 2011, Obama produced the long form of his birth certificate from Hawaii. And that was the one that had all the information incontestable. People continued to claim that the document was fake after that, but Obama pretty much just was like, this is a distraction. Believe what you want. You have the documents. And it pretty much went quiet, except for the people that continued to this day to say it, which is ridiculous because in 2016, during Donald Trump's actual presidential election, he eventually stated publicly that Obama was born in the United States. But there are people to this day that still want to cling to that and say,
well, he never produced the record.
Probably not knowing that Donald Trump already cleared that. But nonetheless, without Trump's involvement, the movement would not have sparked back up, likely, because it was largely accepted by most with the first birth certificate being shown. And now, I want to address something that I've seen going around that people who are in denial about Donald Trump being and want to explain away all his very obvious behaviors, circulating a photo around that shows Donald Trump and Rosa Parks and Muhammad Ali standing, I think, on a stage. And it is where they are receiving the Ellis Island Award. Okay? Now, this is one of the dumbest things I've seen going around. This is the type of thing that I'm going to explain. The concept of self-snitching. And that is a thing that happens when someone who is, in fact, what they're being accused of in this instance, but they try to prove it away, even though they really are. And they're trying to get a gotcha moment and show some proof that's supposed to make the other side think they're stupid and be like,
see, I told you, how could I be if this?
And in those moments, that person doesn't realize that they're just further reporting on themselves and that we can see right through it. To use this picture as proof that Donald Trump's not racist is one of those self-snitching elements. This happened in 1986. This is a real picture. It is authentic. But the details matter. Big time. So Rosa Parks, civil rights icon, and she received the Ellis Island Award that year. True. Muhammad Ali, civil rights icon as well, received the Ellis Island Award that year. True. Donald Trump, not a civil rights icon, and did receive the Ellis Island Award that year in the same vicinity as these two civil rights icons. However, he did not receive the award for the same reason that those two people received the award. In fact, the Ellis Island Medal of Honor is presented by the Ellis Island Honor Society, and it is presented to many people every year, and it is presented for various reasons. And these people are people who are recognized for various contributions to American life. That's it. Okay? Just because a couple of people receive it for civil rights doesn't mean that everyone received it for that reason. And that's definitely not the case with Donald Trump. Donald Trump was one of 80 recipients at that ceremony. And his award was given for his background as a New York real estate developer and for his German heritage. Nothing to do with civil rights. Nothing to do with African American people. Nothing to do with caring about them or doing good for them or anything like that. The only reason that he was in that photo is because he also received the award that year, and they also received the award that year, so they happened to be standing in the same vicinity, and a picture was taken. The two awards had nothing to do with each other. Okay, so it wasn't like Donald Trump was being recognized in a similar context with Rosa Parks and Muhammad Ali. So to use that photo and say,
yeah, looks real racist, doesn't he?
Is the dumbest thing.
Duh.
Like, do you want to just tell on yourself about how much research you don't do and how fixated you are on proving this obviously racist person is not racist? Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to do that so bad? I think I can think of a few reasons. That's why it's called a self-snitch or a self-report. Because what other reason would you have to do that? And if you can't see his racism and his blatant acts of racism repeatedly, maybe you can't face the racism within yourself.
Yikes-a-roo!
So let me just explain something that I've learned about racism, since it's tricky, I guess, for far too many people. To exist within someone, it doesn't actually have to be known or acknowledged, like by them on a conscious level, to be fully in operation. And that is because some things are defined by the intention behind them, but then some things are defined by the impact that they have, regardless of what the conscious intention was. For example, to lie. The definition of to lie. You must be aware that what you are saying is not the truth and have the explicit intention to deceive. If you just give incorrect information that you're not aware was incorrect, that isn't a lie because you don't know that you're lying. You're not intentionally trying to deceive. Part of the definition of to lie is to intentionally deceive, okay? But then there are other things that are defined by the impact, such as abuse. Abuse is determined based on the impact on the victim. So if someone isn't meaning to be abusive or they don't know that action was abusive in some way, that doesn't change the fact that they abused someone because it's about the impact, and that is how racism is. So the fact of the matter is that on numerous repetitive occasions, Donald Trump has made comments. They just are that. And he has behaved in a racist manner. It doesn't matter if you agree with it or not. It doesn't matter if you think that should be determined as racist. It just is. That's what it was. Like I said, you can try to explain away like a few of his comments or actions maybe, but you can't explain away the long extended pattern. You can't. My fourth example of Donald Trump being is the way he turned the word undocumented immigrant into the word criminal and made those two terms synonymous with every statement that he began making about those types of people. He stopped saying, I don't know if he ever said undocumented immigrant, which is what they are. He often said illegals. He often said illegal aliens. But mostly, he veered off of that and eventually just started saying those criminals. He said things like they were inherently born criminals. If you agree with that statement, then you are racist as well. Okay, because that is not true. You can't say a blanketed statement about a whole entire group of people and say,
that's just the way they're born.
There's no group of people that is true about. So if you say something like that, or you believe something like that, then you are being period.
And that's a period.
There's no way around it, all right? And I mean, there's so many other examples. I gotta kind of move on here. But the most recent example was so blatant. And that was when Donald Trump posted a video in the childish manner that he likes to do constantly, which is another concern all of its own, that depicted the Obamas as apes. And I was flabbergasted at the people that wanted to defend this. There's no defense of it. That's a perfect example of, whether you want to explain it away or not, to depict Black people as apes. I don't care what context you did it in. I don't care how many white people have been depicted as apes. I don't care how many other people were in that video. I don't care if they put Joe Biden on an ape's body. I don't care that it was a Lion King reference. I don't care about any of that. Doesn't matter. That's all a BS diversion. I don't care. To depict Black people as apes is racist in any context.
Hello?
Because it has been historically used to dehumanize Black people back to slavery, when they wanted to use scientific and biological determinations that told everybody that Black people are closer to apes than they are to humans. Therefore, we don't need to care about them. They are not really humans. They are more like monkeys. And that had a monumental impact on how they were treated in this country. Dehumanization is an extremely dangerous method of harming others. If you can get a huge group of people to dehumanize someone, it's much easier to abuse, take away their rights, believe that they don't deserve as much, and not treat them with the same empathy, the same consideration, the same compassion, and not really care when they are harmed, mistreated, all of those things. Dehumanization is horrific, and it was done by depicting Black people as apes. Okay, so when you, as a white person, especially the leader of the country, depict Black people as apes, there's no excuse for it. And if you don't understand that, if you can't get that concept, then you might want to examine your own racism. I saw pictures of George W. Bush and them comparing him to some kind of monkey at some point because of a funny face that he made. That's not tied to any systematic dehumanization of him, okay? And that didn't affect how he was treated overall by society. That didn't impact his entire race of people. It wasn't racially motivated. And it wasn't used to dehumanize an entire group of people, okay? The reason that that's not racist is because it's not about his race when you do it, duh. Like, well, I don't understand why people can't grasp this. It's like, please just use your critical thinking for 2 seconds. There's no way around it, and I don't tolerate it. That is a deal breaker for me. So, as I said, one of the very reasons that if you are one of those people that you now have to continuously defend more blatant and more blatant examples of racism, because he's getting real blatant with it, is because to admit that Donald Trump, the person you also probably likely voted for if you have this stance, to admit that he is racist, you would have to confront your own racism. And many are not brave enough or honest enough to do so. I think there is a portion of people that are in denial, but I think there's also a group of people that are very blatantly racist and actually are supporting him because he's racist, and they would like to promote those things. Also, here's food for thought. Even if you have a Black friend, you could still be racist, okay? Even if there are Black people in your family, you could still be racist. Guess what? Even if you have a partner who is Black, you could still be racist. Even if you have children with a Black person, you could still be racist. Yes, I've seen it, and it's crazy. Guess what else? You could sometimes do things that benefit other races or benefit the Black community. But if you also do racist things, you are still racist. So any good measure that Donald Trump has taken to help Black people, even if that, guess what? He's still racist because of the racist things that he's done. It's not like a system where like it cancels each other out. It doesn't work that way. So food for thought. All right, next up we have women. Surprise! All right, the second reason that Donald Trump has been more polarizing and divisive to American relationships and families than I would say any presidencies of the past is also because he has a rampant history of sexual misconduct involving women and girls. Here are the facts. Roughly 25 to 28 women have accused Donald Trump of specific acts of sexual misconduct or accusations involving some type of sexual element to them. And no, this did not just happen when he started to run for office. Nope. Sorry, guys. He actually had women who accused him as far back as the end of the 80s. So let's run down the most reported on cases, shall we? Let's start with his own ex-wife, Ivana Trump. In a deposition during the Trump's divorce proceedings in 1989, Ivana Trump said that her husband had attacked her and R-worded her. She claimed that while in pain from a scalp reduction surgery, gone bad or wrong or something, performed by a surgeon that she had recommended to him, her then husband ripped out a handful of her hair from her scalp, then forced himself upon her sexually. When the act was over, she claims she ran to her bedroom and locked herself inside, crying herself to sleep. She claimed that in the morning, Donald Trump came to the door, the locked door, and knocked, and nonchalantly, as though nothing like that had happened, just said,
"Does it hurt?"
A journalist in 1993 wrote an unapproved biography on Donald Trump and his misconducts with women and just the abhorrent person, human being that he was even back then. And he had included this incident, which obviously infuriated Donald Trump. And then he did what he always does. He denied that the incident happened, even though it was in the proceedings in his ex-wife's own words. He also made sure to deny that he ever had scalp reduction surgery. That was very important to him. His lawyers then targeted the publishing company of the book and demanded that if they were to sell the book anymore, that they needed to include a now new statement from Ivana Trump, a leaflet in every single book. It was a written statement, but Ivana had also spoken about this, and she had backpedaled on the terminology she had used during that deposition, specifically focusing in on the fact that she had used the R word. So she admitted to using the R word, even in this statement, and she just clarified that, yeah, she said that, but she didn't want it to be taken so seriously, like criminally. What she meant to communicate, she says, is that as a woman, she felt violated, and because her husband had put that upon her in anger, rather than with like an emotional tenderness that should be present. She did not, however, deny that it happened. She just denied that the definition of the R word is the definition of the R word. That's all. Now, speculation that Ivana had 3 children with Donald Trump and was hoping for a good outcome in her divorce proceedings and wanted to get them finished led to suspicions that might be what was behind the statement, which Ivana reportedly received a settlement or payment in the divorce of $14 million. And, you know, $14 million could maybe promote you to try to twist the definition of the R word. I don't know. Maybe. I could understand. With 3 kids at stake, maybe. I guess so. I don't hold that against her. That's her personal business. But the facts of the matter are that she did not deny that the incident happened. She only denied the way that she framed it and what that meant. Next up, we have Stormy Daniels. Some of you might say this incident was consensual. It was. Stormy Daniels was an adult film star, and she met Donald Trump at a golf retreat of some sort back in 2006. And of high notation is that this was right at the time that Melania Trump had just given birth to their baby boy, Barron. He was fresh off the womb. And Donald Trump was at this golf retreat, and he met Stormy Daniels. She says that she then ended up going to his hotel suite that night, where they were supposed to meet for dinner at the hotel. But upon arriving at his hotel suite, she says that Donald Trump answered the door in silk pajamas, invited her in, and they began talking about her possibly appearing on The Apprentice and some really great opportunities that would be very enticing for a woman in her line of work and her goals at the time. And she says that she then went to the bathroom, and when she came back out, Donald Trump was laying on the bed, or sitting, I'm not sure, in only boxers and possibly a t-shirt, an undershirt. They then proceeded to have sexual relations. Stormy Daniels always testified that the act was consensual, that it happened one time, and that it was a lot more awkward and transactional than it was romantic. It was with an understanding that Trump could provide her with certain elevations to her career, and the implication that maybe she owed him something. But nonetheless, it was consensual, so they moved on, okay? So then it was said that between 2006 and 2007, their contact kind of like happened here and there, but they never saw each other again, but they stayed in touch. Nothing ever materialized professionally in that aspect. The part that really is of importance on this particular incident is that before the 2016 election for Donald Trump, Michael Cohen, his attorney, paid Stormy Daniels $130,000 through a shell company called Essential Consultants LLC, which a shell company is like a fake company that is masking for money that they don't want to be known for handling what it's handling. Okay, so they want to cover this money up and make it seem like a legit business expense, okay? The purpose of the payment was for Daniels to sign a non-disclosure agreement to make sure that she would keep quiet about that alleged affair back in 2006 in light of the campaign happening. Now, this happened because Stormy Daniels was scheduled to go onto a talk show or an interview of some sort where she was going to talk about the incident. And so it was hush money. Now, the thing is, the payment itself wasn't necessarily illegal, and Stormy Daniels agreed to it, and she did sign the non-disclosure agreement. And then she kept quiet about it. The legal issue there was centered around how the reimbursement was recorded. So in bookkeeping, in 2017, after Trump became president, Cohen was then reimbursed by the Trump organization. Okay, that's a no-no. And then payments were logged in the campaign logs as a legal expense. That's against the law. That is a felony, actually. And so prosecutors later argued that the records were falsified business entries and that the real purpose was to conceal election-related payments, to hide certain seedy acts from the voting public in order to obtain presidency. That's a no-no. So in early 2018, Cohen pled guilty in a federal court to several crimes, including campaign finance violations. He testified that the payment to Daniels was made at the request of Donald Trump. So he turned on Trump, but Trump denied breaking the law. He denied that the affair ever happened. He denied even meeting Stormy Daniels, and he denied that he ever reimbursed Michael Cohen for the hush money. But Michael Cohen pled guilty and then went to jail. Well, Trump was denying that the payment ever happened, that the event ever even happened. So if payment never happened, that non-disclosure agreement didn't seem like it was going to hold up too good. Okay, so Stormy Daniels spoke publicly at that point in 2018, and she described the alleged affair in interviews in her book, Full Disclosure. Trump responded on social media, of course, and through his attorneys, and continued to deny the entire encounter. But then, in 2023, Donald Trump was indicted by a grand jury in Manhattan, New York, and the charges were 34 counts of falsifying business records. Yikes. Felonies. And prosecutors argued that the records concealed an illegal election influence scheme. In this rare event throughout Donald Trump's marked past, Donald Trump was found guilty. He was tried in a criminal court and convicted of these 34 felonies. So he, in fact, is a felon. And this made him, just think about this, made him the very first U.S. president to ever be convicted of a felony. He was the first former president to ever be convicted of a felony, okay? And then went on to become the first felon to then become president again, which I didn't know was allowed until I watched it happen before my eyes. So after this, sentencing complications started to occur during the 2024 election. Sentencing kept getting delayed because of appeals by Trump's lawyers and the Trump team, the presidential campaign timing, and them kind of doing like more and more, putting it off. And then constitutional questions about prosecuting a sitting president. This is where Trump did something very sneaky and actually like evil genius level, I think, pretty much. Because in November of 2024, sad freaking day is that, Trump was elected as president again. And that created a constitutional conflict because the Justice Department had long held a policy that a sitting president cannot be imprisoned or prosecuted, which I think is a wild part of our Constitution and law. Because what? Well, I mean, so I am to understand that a sitting president could what? Could technically just walk outside and shoot someone in the face and we can't prosecute him or imprison him? That's scary. Where do we draw the line? What would happen if he did that? So first it was just kind of like, well, we can't do anything about it right now because he's currently president. Maybe afterwards we'll revisit it. But then 2025, Judge Juan Merchan, who presided over the case involving Stormy Daniels and Donald Trump, decided to go ahead and formally sentence him. But he did so by issuing what's called an unconditional discharge as his sentence. Okay. That means that the conviction still stands. Donald Trump is still a felon, has 34 felonies. The conviction is credible, but no punishment was ever actually imposed. And now the judge's reasoning for this was murky because Trump's team tried to present the logic that as a president that was voted back into office, I mean, the American public must have faith in him and must want him in that role, not in prison. So the sentencing should, in effect, probably just be thrown out, and he should not have to face that because that's not what the American people want, since that's what their vote says, right? Well, the judge outwardly rejected that notion, however, claimed that he was just trying to balance several things: respecting the jury's verdict, preserving the rule of law, and avoiding interference with the duties of a sitting president forever, even while he's no longer a sitting president.
Why?
So he thought the only answer would be to have to give him an unconditional discharge. No other option, right? Even when the prosecution offered things like an alternative, like pausing the case until he leaves office. But the judge was like,
No, that's way too much to be hanging over the president's head for 4 years. We don't want that. That could affect how he handles the country.
Now, you can imagine that someone who is really dedicated to justice and really thinks that people who commit felonies should probably serve out their time. And then you have a partner, family member, whoever, that voted this person back into office despite his felonious behavior. You could imagine that could cause some tension when he is then excused from sentencing because they voted him into office. Doesn't make you feel warm and fuzzy inside, really, you know? And so the judge decided to finalize the sentencing with upholding the conviction with no penalty. And that outcome is so unprecedented. The people who voted for him didn't care about that. And some were very confused by this. They thought it still meant that, you know, after he's no longer president, it could be raised again and then he could be sentenced. But no, even though the judge said that's not what he was preventing, that is exactly what it prevented. It was an official sentencing. So Donald Trump will never serve any punishment for his felonies in that case. Interesting, right? All right, next up on the list, we have Jill Harth. And this happened in the 1990s. She came forward in 1997, so far before his election. The allegations were as follows. Jill Harth was a Trump business associate in the early 1990s. She alleged that in 1992, at dinner, Donald Trump had put his hand up her skirt under the table. She said that he attempted to reach her genitals with her partner present. So he was doing a little like slipperoonie under the table, okay? And she said that she had to physically block his hand from entering her body. Second incident was in January of 1993 when she claimed that Trump pulled her into a bedroom at Mar-a-Lago, reportedly Little Ivanka's room, while he was giving her a tour of Mar-a-Lago. She said he pushed her up against a wall. Remember this course of events, okay? Pushed her up against a wall, allegedly tried to kiss her, and put his hands all over her body. She said she struggled and eventually escaped the room. She described it as she freaked out and flailed and then ran out of the room. So in 1997, she did file a lawsuit. And she was alleging in that lawsuit relentless harassment, non-consensual touching of her intimate private parts, repeatedly, and then stalking behavior after she became engaged to another man. This part got tricky because Jill later withdrew the lawsuit. And a lot of people just accepted that probably meant that it was based on false allegations. But the truth is a little more up in the air than that, because at the time, there was a subsequent settlement that was happening between Donald Trump and Jill Harth's partner over a business deal that had gone wrong, where her partner was attempting to reach a business settlement where he would benefit in that case. And so she admitted that she felt immense pressure from her partner to give up on this of sexual harassment because it was screwing up his ability to settle with Trump over this business deal. It's a very complicated case, and again, these were never tried in a court and nothing was proven. And Jill did act in ways that were very confusing because throughout the time that she was seeing her eventual husband, she teeter-tottered on support for Donald Trump and seemingly caving into some of his relentless badgering of her to leave her current boyfriend, to leave her fiance. She said Trump did everything in his power to get me to leave him. He constantly called me and said, "I love you, baby. I'm going to be the best lover you ever had. What are you doing with that loser? You need to be with me. You need to step up into the big leagues." She said he was constantly working on me during that time, and that took a toll on me. But eventually I moved on. I am a forgiving person, okay? I am a Christian. I moved on. She then said that Trump's team tried to get her to say that it never happened. One thing in her favor was that Harth's husband, who had the business deal with Trump, was later on record speaking highly of Jill and verifying that her claims he believes are 100% true, despite the fact that they are no longer married. I believe she's divorced. And he admits to her dropping the allegations to help him with his business settlement with Trump. He also says that he met Harth when she was still in high school. He says he's never doubted her. And his quote is, "I know they're all true," he said of the allegations. "I knew her way too long to think she could make up stuff like that. It wasn't in her. She wasn't capable of making up the things she said in that thing." So that's from her very long-term partner turned husband turned ex-husband now. Still saying that. And it is very important to note that Jill did not initiate talking out about this after 1997. It was squashed. She decided to bury the hatchet. They had talked about it. And even in 2015, assuming that they had buried the hatchet and swept it under the rug and all was friendly. She had agreed to that with him. She had gone out to his campaign and offered to be his makeup artist. She said she felt like he was looking a hot mess and she had always taken care of that for him. And she thought that they were on good terms. She was a makeup artist who needed a job. And so she thought, we're on good terms. Why not? You know, he's probably not going to do that now, especially after everything he's facing right now. He's got to be on his best behavior and he's trying to get into office. So he wouldn't do that to me now. So I should be safe and I need a job. So I'm going to go. And so she said they even talked about it a little bit while she was there. She said that he was very happy to see her, that she had been requested, and Secret Services had actually brought her in after she had offered this to him. So he was very polite with her. So it's assumed that he felt they were on good terms as well because she wasn't going to be talking about it anymore. And she said to him briefly, if anybody ever brings it up with me, I'm just not going to say anything. Only the good things. And she said, okay, Donald. And he said, okay as well. And kind of gave her a hug. And to her, that meant that he also would keep his mouth shut if asked about it and not talk badly about her. But when it was brought up to him because of the 1997 incident, Donald Trump turned on her and completely said, no, she's a liar. That never happened. That was all a bunch of lies. That is when she felt the need to step forward and defend herself. So it wasn't brought back up by her. It was denied by Donald Trump, and her character was brought into question. And then she received backlash because of that when she didn't even talk. So that's also an important detail. So I'm just telling you all the details of what happened. There's no proof besides all of those circumstantial stories. But again, when it's someone that we're talking about that just keeps having a pattern of this, I don't know of anybody who's been accused on this level and has some that were proven in official courts and has such a track record of being that type of person, is saying it out of his mouth, and then people are still going, well, maybe he didn't do it. Come on, bro. Of course, he did do it. He said it. And we're going to get to that. He said it. And okay, maybe of some of the women, maybe a couple stragglers, this is a stretch, but maybe a couple are just jumping on the bandwagon and just trying to get some attention or trying to get some money or whatever they're doing. But here's what I want you to know. With Donald Trump, it's to a level that does not freaking matter. Who cares? Because some of them, a good majority of them, happened. They did. You don't get accused to that level unless they happened. I don't know one person that's happened to where it wasn't true. To this level, 28 different people with very similar stories that came out at different points along the way. And then his own behavior. I mean, come on. And then you just constantly, your only answer to all of this constantly is
lies, just lies. It's a lie. I never did any of that. I didn't do that.
Never in his life has this man admitted to something remotely wrong that he's done. People are going to do things wrong. Donald Trump's done a lot of things wrong. Okay? And the fact that he thinks that he can always just constantly say that he hasn't done nothing wrong should be alarming to you. That is a demonstration of his character that can spill into so many different areas, especially in dangerous ways when you make him the president of the United States of America. And he has that kind of a character. The critical thinking is just not happening here, and it's just disturbing. And it's affecting all of us in ways that go far beyond just a simple correction. Long-term changes, maybe permanent for some of us as far as our lifetime goes. Incredibly huge stuff to take seriously. And when it comes to things like that, relationships end, and for good reason. All right, so of course he never admitted to anything with Jill. And Jill just kind of got over defending herself and was like, whatever, I know my truth and that's that. Next up, we have Rachel Crooks, and this took place in 2005. Story is as follows. She was a 22-year-old receptionist at Bayrock Group inside of Trump Towers. And she says that she introduced herself to Donald Trump outside of an elevator where she had spotted him, and he shook her hand, then pulled her toward him, and then kissed her directly on the mouth. Okay? This is not the only time that this exact incident has been described by many women. So many. She is quoted saying, "It was so inappropriate. I was so upset." She described feeling shocked and unable to fully react in the moment. She eventually came forward in 2016 when a lot of the allegations were coming out, and Trump's response was that it never happened. Shocker. He says that none of this ever took place, and he also attacked the reporter who published the article about it, saying that person is a disgusting human being. Surprise, surprise. Next up, we have Kristen Anderson, and her story was as follows. Anderson says that she was sitting on a couch at a Manhattan nightclub with friends, and then a man next to her reached up her skirt. She says he touched her private part through her underwear. He made it that far up. Initially, she says she did not even realize who it was, but then friends identified the man as Donald Trump afterward. She says this happened in the early 1990s, and she came forward about it in 2016. Of course, the campaign denied the allegation, called it fabricated and politically motivated, which was a general response of the time to all of the accusers. Next up, we have Mindy McGilvray. This is her story about what happened. She was a photographer's assistant at Mar-a-Lago. She says that Trump approached her from behind, grabbed her booty forcefully, but said nothing. She says she turned around and she saw him immediately after, like as it was happening and after. And she says that this happened in 2003. And she also came forward for an interview during the 2016 election. There was no known direct rebuttal for this one by Donald Trump. It was just kind of included because there were so many allegations at the time. Next up, we have Natasha Stoynoff. She was interviewing Trump and Melania at Mar-a-Lago. And then Trump allegedly led her into a private room alone. And she wrote that he pushed her against a wall and forced his tongue into her mouth. He tends to do a lot of forcing things into women. She says that she struggled, and then, thankfully, a butler entered, interrupting and potentially saving her from the encounter. She says that this happened in December of 2005, and she came forward in the 2016 election. Trump said the same thing. He denied it, said it was politically motivated. He also claimed that People magazine made it up. Those were just like general statements he made at rallies. He didn't say specifically her. Next up, we have Summer Zervos. This is what she alleges happened. She had met up with Trump to discuss employment after appearing on The Apprentice. She says that he then kissed her aggressively, grabbed her breast, pressed his eggplant up on her, okay, and then tried to get her to lie down. And so she says this happened in 2007, and she came forward in a press conference during the 2016 elections. Now, she particularly ended up suing him later for defamation after he denied the allegations and claimed that her claims were false. Now, the way this turned out was kind of lackluster because the case didn't end up going to trial. It ended in 2021 when Summer Zervos voluntarily dropped it, and she dropped it with prejudice, meaning that she cannot refile that same claim. So that's interesting. Reports by her lawyers were that she just wanted to move on. And based on what we've seen Trump do often, there was a lot of speculation that he may have threatened her, may have said that he would ruin her. Maybe she didn't feel like she had enough money to win, didn't feel like she had enough proof. She never really clarified why she dropped the case. But she did maintain that her allegations against the president were absolutely true. And she said that she would never retract them. Don't worry, we have many more. Many more. Next up, we have Kathy Heller. This is what she alleges happened. She was introduced to Trump at a Mother's Day event with her family present. She says he grabbed her hand, pulled her toward him, and then attempted to kiss her on the lips. She turned her head just in time so that he ended up kissing her just on the side of the mouth. She says this happened in 1997. She talked about it in 2016. I guess this didn't make the cut of being that serious, so he didn't really say anything about it. It's just kind of included in all the others. And then there was Nini Laaksonen. She was a Miss Universe contestant in 2006. She says that Trump grabbed her booty backstage before a television appearance. She said he really grabbed my butt. He didn't really have a specific denial of it. He looped it in with all the others. And now, next is Temple Taggart McDowell, Miss Utah, USA. She says that Trump kissed her on the lips twice without permission during different pageant activities. She described feeling very uncomfortable and then said that she left early. This happened in 1997, and she came forward in May of 2016. Trump denied. I mean, we can just assume Trump denied all of them, because he did. Next up, we have Karina Virginia, and she alleges what happened was this. Trump approached her while she waited for a car. This apparently happened at the US Open. He commented on her legs, then he reached out and touched her breast, and she immediately left. She says this happened in 1998. She came forward in 2016. We have some more. Don't worry, we're going to go through these next ones pretty quickly, okay? Because there's many. Jessica Leeds, groped on airplane. He groped her breasts and tried to go under her skirt. Happened in the 1980s. Mariah Bellotto. She says that Trump entered dressing rooms where minors were actually there at the time undressed. It happened in 1997, she said. Trump didn't respond directly to this allegation, but he already admitted to Howard Stern in a recording that this was something that he did and that he could get away with it because he was the CEO and he owned the pageants and he could go backstage anytime he wanted to when he knew that women would be standing there with no clothes and that he could look at their beautiful bodies and he could get away with it. That is what he said. And I will give you the exact quote coming up. We then have Bridget Sullivan. She also alleged that Trump entered a dressing room where there were women who were not clothed. She didn't specifically say that it was minors the way that Mariah had, but she just said, while women were naked, he entered dressing rooms. And she said this happened in 2000 and she came forward in 2016. Also, Samantha Holvey, same thing. He entered while contestants were undressed, exposed, without any former announcement that he was going to come in. He just came in and stared at them. Okay, she did not specify minors. Only Mariah did that. Tasha Dixon, same thing, from 2001. And then there was Lisa Boyne. She made the allegation that Trump made women walk across a table and looked up their skirts in 1996. She came forward in 2016. Jessica Drake, non-consensual kissing and grabbing in 2006. Jennifer Murphy, unwanted kiss attempt in 2005. Karen Johnson, groped at a party in the early 2000s. She wrote it in a book in 2019. Amy Doris, groped at US Open in 1997. She came forward in 2020. Stacey Williams, she says she was groped at Trump Tower after Epstein introduction. She says this happened in 1993. She came forward in 2024. And then there was that anonymous Jane Doe, who is in the Epstein files, by the way, that they are not releasing. She says that she was raped by Epstein and sexually assaulted by Donald Trump, specifically at the age of 13. And that Donald Trump knew she was 13, and she describes it in detail in an interview. She says this happened in 1994 when she was 13 years old. There is a full interview of her talking about this, where her face is blurred out. And she is talking about the details of this happening, and it just got pushed under the rug and claimed that it didn't need further investigation, even though she claims adamantly that she was scared out of it. She did not want anything to happen to her that was being threatened, that was going to happen to her, or to her family. And so she withdrew her lawsuit. 13, guys. 13. All right, that's not all of them, but those are just some of the most reported on instances. And I'm sorry, but how many more do you need? All of those women are lying. All of those women are lying. If that's what you think, you might want to enroll in your local community college at a logic class, okay? Because that's not logical or reasonable at all. Okay? No. Furthermore, here's the part where it gets really obvious, okay? Donald Trump has, in his own voice, from his own mouth, said he does this. He said it. Both things that he's most often accused of doing, he has said that he does. Okay? And I'm going to now play you the clips of him saying this.
And all of a sudden I see her, she's now got the big phony tits and everything. She's totally changed her look.
Jeez, your girl's hot as shit. In the purple.
Whoa!
Yes!
Whoa!
Yes, the Donald has scored!
Whoa!
Oh, my man!
Maybe it's a different one.
Better not be the publicist. No, it's her.
Yeah, that's her, with the gold. I better use some Tic Tacs just in case I start kissing her. You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the... You can do anything. It's always good if you don't fall out of the bus. Like Ford, Gerald Ford, remember? Hello, how are you?
Okay, that's what he said. And then on Howard Stern, he said...
Well, you could also say, as the owner of the pageant, it's your obligation to do that.
So you have done that. Now,
I'll tell you the funniest is that I'll go backstage before a show.
Yes.
And everyone's getting dressed and ready and everything else. And, no men are anywhere. And I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant, and therefore I'm inspecting it. You know, I'm inspecting.
Right,
I want to make sure that
like
everything is good.
You're there.
Yeah, the dress. Is everyone okay? You know, they're standing there with no clothes. Is everybody okay? And you see these incredible-looking women. And so I sort of get away with things like that.
I mean, I feel like I have every word of those clips memorized. I still get so infuriated. Ladies and gentlemen, our president. Yeah, so he says in very clear English, I just start kissing them. I don't even wait. They just let you. They'll let you do anything. Grab them by the... You can do anything. All the while. Why are you laughing so much about this? Why is this man laughing so much? Has anyone asked the other guy? Why are you laughing so hard? What is so giggly about this? It's like a different universe. It's like, what the hell? I just don't get it. The most common defense that I hear for this clip is, I think, locker room talk. Yeah. Okay, let's go with it. If you are a man and you are saying, this is just locker room talk.
I don't like it. It's not okay. I don't like what he said here, but men just be doing that.
You know?
Sorry you had to hear that. We usually don't say it in front of everybody.
Okay. If this is how men are talking behind the scenes about women, I think it's pretty understandable then why in the United States we have an issue of nearly half of all women experiencing some form of contact sexual violence in their lifetimes. If that's how y'all are locker room talking. I think that makes a lot of sense. It isn't just locker room talk. If it's happening constantly, not only just in general, but at the very same time, this person saying it has had at least a dozen women who have accused him of doing the exact thing he is saying here. Kissing them without waiting. Should we rewind? Unwanted kissing. Non-consensual kissing. Pressing them up against a wall. Shoving his tongue in their mouth. That is exactly what he's talking about doing here. He's not implying it. He said it straight up.
It's probably just locker room talk.
It's probably just locker room talk about the things he's doing outside of that locker room, I guess. Then cool, yeah. In the second clip, he says, I'll go backstage before a show. Howard Stern says, yes. Eager husband. And everyone's getting dressed and ready, and I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant, and therefore I'm inspecting it. Both men laugh. Is everyone okay? You know. They're standing there with no clothes. They're standing there with no clothes. Is everybody okay? And you see these incredible looking women, and so I sort of get away with things like that. And everyone defending him. That's how he's getting away with it. He is getting away with it. He does get away with it. It is very rare that we have a perpetrator on record clearly confessing to a crime while millions of people around him contort their brains to try to explain how that could mean anything other than what it just so straightforwardly means. Numerous women who participated in his Miss USA and his Miss Teen USA pageants confirmed witnessing specific moments that he did the exact thing that he flat out says he does right here. The biggest concern, I would say, I mean, it's all concerning, but a really interesting concerning part is that he ran Miss Teen USA too, okay? This means underage girls. They were teens. And then we have a specific pageant contestant, Mariah Bellato, who confirms that she witnessed Donald Trump barge into a dressing room during a pageant where there were underage girls present in that dressing room without clothes on. Guys, I know most of you get it, but like to the people that don't, maybe they do get it. Maybe y'all do get it. Regardless of their age, signing up to be in Donald Trump's pageant does not give him the right to just barge in to their private dressing room. That he confirms there are no men in there. He says that just so he can snag a little peek-see at their bodies. This is sexual exploitation, highly likely, of minors by Donald Trump. He says it on record and he boasts that he can get away with it. Y'all made him the president. It's infuriating. What an additional way to just shit on women. Excuse my language, but thanks a lot, America. That's how I feel. And honestly, if you feel at very first reaction, you feel compelled to defend this person, Donald Trump, in this clip, you feel compelled to find some excuse for him for why he said this and why it doesn't mean what exactly he's saying, rather than instantly feeling concerned about the numerous women and girls that he likely violated. He did violate. There's women and girls that he absolutely did violate with proof. And you don't first think about What if that was my daughter? What if that was my wife? What if that was my mother? What if that was my grandmother? What if that was my aunt? What if that was my cousin? What if that was whoever, whatever women are in your life? If that is not your first thought, what the actual is wrong with you?